Hey folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. This is a special feedback episode where we've actually compiled a couple of video feedbacks from some of our viewers, and we're going to take a look at them and we're going to respond in an episode. So in this episode, I'm going to do a couple, and why don't I show you one of the first ones that we got, and I'll respond to it. So here is the Jukebox Cowboy responding to my Grand Funk Railroad episode.
Well, howdy, fellow Contrarians. It's your old friend, the Jukebox Cowboy. Grand Funk. Now, this is one of my favorite episodes ever. Let's talk a minute about the whole idea that more record sales equal more people liking the record. You know, quite often it just means more people were exposed to the record. Maybe the record before it did fairly well and the record company decided to give it a little push. Maybe the DJs had a little bit more motivation to play that record. Hey, what record was on the radio at the time that was a hit? More importantly, what record wasn't on the charts that prevented them from being a hit? And speaking of the charts, read the book Hitmen if you want to know about record chartings and what they're really worth. Okay, while we're at it, let's talk about record reviewers, particularly these guys, okay? Rolling Stone hated Grand Funk. They hated AC/DC. They hated Rush. They wanted to destroy Black Sabbath. They didn't like Nazareth. They gave Jimi Hendrix's first album a horrible review. So let's put these guys in the right perspective.
Yeah, so Jukebox Cowboy, first of all, I think you should have your own show. You're a very colorful personality, and we appreciate all the feedback videos that you've sent us, and we will feature Jukebox Cowboy in our video episodes more. In this particular case, the comment that you made about how record sales and critical consensus don't mean anything, and I see that a lot in the comments. I kind of just tried to, and I've explained this actually before in some of the videos, that like I try to use things that are objective when I'm debating somebody like Martin Popoff, who has such a wealth of knowledge that like I can't make up for what he knows about music on certain bands just by, you know, if we're planning to do an episode a couple of weeks down the road or something. Like I can listen to the album a few times and I can listen to some of the other albums and I can kind of do a little bit of research, but like I can't make up that he has a lifetime, he has a wealth of knowledge. And I've been listening to music for pretty much my lifetime, right? But he knows more about bands I've never even heard of, you know? He forgets more about bands I've never even heard of than I'll ever know. So it's I try to stick to things that are objective. I do put my subjective spin on things, and I do comment on certain songs I like better, certain sounds I like better, certain little production things here and there. I'm not so much a production guy, more of like a song guy. If I like the songs on an album that's worsely produced better, then I'll prefer that album over an album that is better produced, but the songs aren't there for me. But I did watch that Zappa documentary from last year, the 2021, directed by Alex Winter. And, you know, Frank Zappa talked about how record sales, record sales aren't a good determinant of how successful an album or a band is, just because like there are, you know, record companies and people in power put certain bands or certain music or certain albums in certain bands and albums have more of an opportunity. And he kind of talked about it in terms of like MTV and the music video era, and how before that you had a whole bunch of little radio stations where like you could put an album out and you could be a hit in certain parts of the country and you didn't need to be a hit nationally. But with MTV, it was like, now you just kind of, it started moving towards, you only had the one opportunity to kind of put something out and be successful. And, believe me, I've been very inspired by Frank Zappa and the comments that he made about some of the orchestra stuff that he did later on in his career, where he basically said that, you know, there wasn't a whole bunch of record company interest and he was funding it himself. And it was almost like he was doing it as like a public service. Like, I'm making this music because I want to hear it. And if anybody else enjoys it, then I'm going to put it in a nice little package and you can enjoy it too. But that's more of like a public service. This is more for me. And that's kind of the same deal with me with the documentary that I'm working on, the Mystique documentary, which is almost finished. Actually, we've already done a second draft of it. I know it's a niche thing. I'm very passionate about it. It's kind of the same thing. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make money. I've already lost money on it. I'm doing it for me. And if anybody else wants to enjoy it, then that's for you to enjoy as well. I'll put it in a nice little package and it'll be there for you to enjoy. Going back to Grand Funk and the record sales, yeah, I know that Grand Funk wasn't like a big critical band, and critics didn't like Grand Funk. And you can look at albums that didn't sell well, and it doesn't really mean that they're not good albums. I totally understand that. I mean, even with our Twisted Sister debate, which we just had, Under the Blade, I think wasn't even certified, but that's my favorite Twisted Sister album, subjectively. And, you know, the Red album might not have sold as much as Closer to Home, but I think that there were things about it that made it better, maybe more for me. It's almost like when we do these debates, the person in the hot seat almost has to kind of explain why, in this case, the album sales don't reflect the quality of the music, or the critical consensus, or the ranking charts, or all of that stuff doesn't reflect the quality of the music. So that's kind of the idea of the show. The person in the hot seat is kind of defending all of that, all the things that they think about whatever record they're defending against the objective stuff. So I mean, like, I totally get what you're saying. And it's kind of a shame that it comes across that way, that I only like, that people might think that I only appreciate music that sold well, because that's not the case at all. There's a lot of bands that aren't as widely known or aren't as popular. Even to people who are into metal and stuff like this, even a band like Saxon, like, you know, you could consider them not a very popular band, right? But anybody in metal pretty much knows Saxon, because they were right during that new wave of British heavy metal phase. And, you know, they put out a bunch of great albums and stuff like this, right? But to like most regular Joes walking down the street who aren't as interested in music or metal, they might not even know who Saxon is, let alone what Denim and Leather is, or Power and the Glory, or Wheels of Steel, or any of that stuff, or what influence that had on metal, right? So like, I totally appreciate music. I love music. And sometimes I prefer albums that didn't sell as well as other albums. You know, Hotter Than Hell from Kiss didn't have a big hit on it like Dynasty did. And I like Dynasty, but I prefer Hotter Than Hell. You know what I mean? So it's just, well, this is a debate style, and we do try to get the person in the hot seat to really defend their choice and say, you know, you like this album, but what about all of this stuff over here, right? And I'm not necessarily saying, you know, well, I prefer this album and everybody should prefer this album because it's a platinum album. Like, there was stuff like Payola back in the day, which it's probably still going on the radio stations and stuff like this. And I know that critical consensus and album sales don't really mean much. And I totally agree with you, and I totally appreciate your comment. So if we're having a debate and I'm bringing up album sales and greatest hits track listings and live set list, critical consensus, and all of that stuff, it's only to try to get the person in the hot seat to defend their choice and explain why that stuff doesn't matter. It's not that I think that personally this album was platinum, so it's better. So thanks a lot, Jukebox Cowboy, for the comment. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. Also, remember, we're on Patreon. We have exclusive videos on there. We have exclusive series. I have a series where I go through Martin Popoff's metal 80s collector guide to metal. And I go through it. I pick out random bands. I give a reaction. I kind of give a review. I agree or disagree with Martin's review. And even the people who are on Patreon who subscribe can recommend bands for me to do reaction videos. Martin kind of does exclusive videos where he reviews bands that we haven't done on the Contrarians or will not do because he agrees with general consensus. He's done Stars and Status Quo and Rat. So those are some of the exclusive videos that Martin does. Those are more like general album reviews. So there's some really cool stuff cooking on Patreon. So if you want to go over there and support the show and support us, then we'd appreciate that a lot. And we'll see you next time.